Suppose a school were to set out deliberately to improve the mental and physical capacities of its students. Suppose its stated aims were to ensure that the pupils left the school not only more intelligent, healthier, and more physically fit than when they arrived, but more intelligent, healthier, and more physically fit than they would be at any other school. Suppose they further claim not only that they could achieve this, but that their students would be more intelligent, enjoy better health and longer life, and be more physically and mentally alert than any children in history. Suppose that a group of educationalists, outstanding ones of course, far more brilliant than any we know of to date, had actually worked out a method of achieving this, in the form perhaps of an educational and physical curriculum. What should our reaction be? I propose that our reaction to such a groundbreaking program should be joy and celebration. A method that could so dramatically improve human potential should be hailed as a monumental achievement. And if someone were to say otherwise, they better have some great arguments against it. To give up a program so successful, there would need to be strong and specific evidence-based objections. The same logic applies to genetic engineering, a field of emerging technology with the potential to remove countless diseases, enhance human capabilities, and reduce suffering on an unprecedented scale. If genetic engineering can achieve these goals, there would have to be some extremely compelling reasons why we should not use this technology. Having studied the objections to genetic engineering, I find them to be extremely weak, and therefore I am endorsing genetic engineering in its attempts to create a better world. But for those who find the objections convincing, or those who want to know answers to the objections, I will address some of the popular ones now, and more in other videos. One of the first objections that always comes up is that we are playing God. This objection is thoroughly vague and meaningless. Who gets to determine which technology is playing God and which is not? What criteria is used to determine if something is playing God or not? And who decided that playing God, whatever that even means, is always a bad thing? Why is genetic engineering playing God, but vaccines and surgeries are not? As Professor of Philosophy Bernard Rollin writes, if playing God in this area is intrinsically wrong, it is hard to see why damming rivers, eradicating smallpox, and building cities is not also wrong. As a matter of fact, numerous theologians from a variety of traditions do not see genetic engineering as inherently wrong. Others have questioned the entire category of playing God. Stanford medical ethicist Ernle W.D. Young, for example, complains that the charge of playing God seems to be leveled only at doctors. This is unfair, he says. Architects and contractors construct bridges that on occasion collapse and kill people, yet no one charges them with playing God. Military commanders are not criticized for playing God when their decisions lead to the death of soldiers in combat. And we ourselves, when deciding to continue smoking or eating unhealthy foods, are in fact making death decisions while enjoying exemption from the playing God charge. Ernle Young raises this complaint in defense of the medical profession. Doctors frequently find themselves in situations where they cannot simply let nature take its course, where they must make the hard decisions. Doctors in this situation should be supported ethically, he believes. They should not be accused of trespassing on God's property. Physicians, like the rest of us, are endowed with the gift and burden of freedom, and this means we cannot escape the responsibility of shouldering decision-making in difficult circumstances. Young is unconvinced that the category playing God should exist at all, and others have asked why changing DNA is worse than changing other biological elements. Why treat nature in general, or DNA specifically, as sacred and therefore morally immune from technological intervention? Ronald Cole Turner, a theologian and ethicist who specializes in bioethics, criticizes Sinsheimer and Rifkin for making an unwarranted philosophical and theological leap from the association of DNA with life to the metaphysical prescription against technical manipulation. Is DNA the essence of life? Is it any more arrogant or sacrilegious to cut DNA than to cut living tissue, as in surgery? It is hard to imagine a scientific or philosophical argument that would successfully support the metaphysical or moral uniqueness of DNA. Even DNA's capacity to replicate does not elevate this molecule to a higher metaphysical or moral level. Replication and sexual reproduction are important capacities, crucial in biology, but they are hardly the stuff of sanctity. To nominate DNA for election into the halls of functional sacredness, says Cole Turner, is arbitrary. Theologians in particular should avoid this pitfall. To think of genetic material as the exclusive realm of divine grace and creativity is to reduce God to the level of restriction enzymes, viruses, and sexual reproduction. Treating DNA as matter, complicated, awe-inspiring, and elaborately coded, but matter nonetheless, is not in itself sacrilegious. Using the playing God objection on genetic engineering is arbitrary and indefensible. I am not willing to give up on a technology that could help millions of people based on such a flimsy objection. Another similar objection to genetic engineering is that it is unnatural. But this is the appeal to nature fallacy, equating natural with good and unnatural with bad. This is a fallacy because it is not true that natural things are always better. For example, vaccines are not natural, and neither are glasses. Yet they are universally accepted for improving and even saving lives. Conversely, cancer, obesity, and other diseases are entirely natural, but no one argues that they are good or should remain unaddressed. Surgery is unnatural, so why is it acceptable to alter God's design in that case? This argument is inconsistent. As it says in a companion to bioethics, in one sense, all of medicine is unnatural, since it seeks to prevent illnesses from taking their natural course. A third objection is the eugenics objection. Critics argue that genetic engineering shares similarities with historic eugenics programs, which were marked by coercion, discrimination, and human rights abuses. They worry that modern genetic engineering could lead to similar societal abuses. However, this objection assumes that genetic engineering will necessarily follow the same path as historic eugenics, which is not the case. Unlike coercive programs of the past, modern genetic engineering emphasizes personal choice, aiming to improve health and reduce suffering without discrimination or force. By focusing on voluntary applications for preventing diseases and enhancing quality of life, genetic engineering avoids the ethical problems associated with historic eugenics. For those who believe eugenics is inherently wrong, I would argue that this position is unjustified. When coercion is absent, there is nothing wrong with seeking to improve the genetic quality of the human population. As the study, What is Immoral About Eugenics? States, the moral case against voluntary choices to advance eugenic goals by individuals or couples has not been persuasively made. Given the power and authority granted to parents to seek to improve or better their children by environmental interventions, at least some forms of genetic selection or alteration seem equally ethically defensible if they are undertaken freely and do not disempower or disadvantage children. The historic problem with eugenics was coercion and persecution, forcing certain traits or eliminating individuals who didn't fit a specific mold. Modern genetic engineering, by contrast, is about choice. It empowers parents to make decisions about their children's health and future, not under the command of an authoritarian regime, but with the freedom to prioritize well-being. Furthermore, many people already engage in a form of eugenics on a micro scale when selecting a spouse. As Professor Emeritus of Philosophy Walter Glannon explains, forms of eugenics not involving direct genetic intervention have been practiced since antiquity. In Plato's Republican Laws, for example, an ideal society would encourage judicious matings, meaning that mating between members of the ruling and mercantile classes would be discouraged. Only those people most likely to produce the best offspring were encouraged to mate, especially within the ruling class. This example of positive eugenics is morally objectionable because it involves discrimination on the basis of social class. By the same token, however, many people today select mates with whom they believe they will have children with favorable physical and intellectual traits, giving them a competitive advantage over others for social goods. This is also a version of positive eugenics, even though it does not involve genetic intervention, nor would most people acknowledge it as such. Selecting a specific mate in order to have children with specific traits and capacities by itself is not morally objectionable to the extent that it is not part of a state-sponsored program, does not involve any coercion, and does not give an unfair advantage to some people over others in having children. Critics also raise concerns about discrimination, but modern societies already have laws designed to prevent such outcomes, and these can be strengthened if necessary. Abandoning life-saving technology simply because it might lead to discrimination is unjustified. With proper oversight, clear regulations, and robust ethical frameworks, genetic engineering can be implemented responsibly and equitably. As this technology becomes more viable and its benefits more apparent, I believe societal objections will gradually diminish. Over time, the majority of the population will likely embrace genetic engineering for its potential to alleviate suffering and improve lives. While this process of acceptance may take decades or even over a century, the transformative impact of this technology makes it a goal worth pursuing. Activists have a responsibility to educate themselves and work to influence public opinion in favor of genetic engineering. By engaging in informed discussions and dispelling misconceptions, they can help ensure that this transformative technology is understood and embraced. We must avoid the tragedy of sitting on a goldmine of potential advancements and failing to utilize it due to unfounded fears or public misconceptions. The last objection I will address is the argument of risk, and I dedicate an entire video to the inequality objection and plan to create more content addressing other concerns, so please subscribe. The risk argument posits that genetic engineering should not be pursued due to its potential dangers. However, as noted in Challenges in Medical Ethics, the South African context, the fact that a procedure is risky does not necessarily give us reason to disavow it entirely, particularly if its potential benefits would be very great. And for this reason, medical risk may not be a knockdown argument against the practice of genetic engineering. While safety concerns, particularly with regard to new and revolutionary interventions, should always be at the forefront of researchers' minds, this suggests the need for the utmost caution, but does not necessarily imply that an outright ban on genetic engineering is justified. If genetic interventions are inherently more risky than other novel medical interventions, they ought to be approached with greater caution. However, if it can be shown through extended and careful research and controlled clinical testing that genetic interventions can overcome the difficulties identified above and could be practiced in a relatively safe and effective manner, this objection simply disappears. This quote highlights the critical distinction between acknowledging risks and abandoning progress altogether. Medical advancements often carry inherent risks, especially in their early stages, yet society does not reject them outright. Vaccines, organ transplants, and even surgeries were once considered highly dangerous, but through meticulous research and testing, they have become life-saving practices. Genetic engineering is no different in this regard. It is also vital to consider the risks of not using this technology. If we fail to pursue genetic engineering, countless individuals will continue to suffer and die from preventable diseases. The suffering we already know to exist is certain, whereas the risks associated with genetic engineering are speculative and may be mitigated through further scientific development. With extended research, controlled trials, and ethical safeguards, these risks can often be minimized or neutralized. To abandon a technology with such transformative potential due to fear of risk would be short-sighted. The very nature of progress requires bold but cautious steps forward. History teaches us that many great advancements were once viewed as dangerous or impossible, until rigorous science proved otherwise. The same principle applies here. The potential benefits of genetic engineering are too significant to ignore, and the risk argument, while important to consider, is not strong enough to justify turning away from this opportunity. The case for genetic engineering is strong, and the counter-arguments are weak. Therefore, there is no reason to be overly conflicted or to pretend that both sides are equally compelling. It is not too difficult to discern which side offers the most promise and benefit for humanity.